Okay, joining us tonight is the co-convener of Bring Back Our Girls movement and a former Minister of Education, Oby Ezekwesili. Very warm evening to you and welcome to Newsnight. The heart is still very heavy, and that is very reflective from your look. You've been at the Unity Fountain all day to commemorate this day and still, you know, reverberate or reiterate 10 years ago when BBOG kicked off. But when you take a cognitive look at the entire scenario, 10 years after, what kind of narrative, you know, is coming out of this nation?
I really think that the Chibok girls' tragedy is a metaphor for the Nigerian situation, a situation where there is a serial failure of governance for the most vulnerable and the poorest amongst us. So we have a situation where those who are supposed to govern, frankly, do not have to govern. They can get away with anything. Because what happened to Chibok girls would never have happened to any of the children of the elite of the society, if there is such a word. I think that, you know, if the political class has a proclivity for choosing itself over those that they are supposed to serve, then tragedies like Chibok girls explain our situation very well. I feel like, you know, when Chibok girls' tragedy happened and the governance failed them, it's evident in the fact that research shows that you stand a higher probability of rescuing victims of kidnap or hostage taking within the first 72 hours of the occurrence. Anything after that is really, you know, left to probability that is closer to 0 than to 1. And so if you remember, and all through this week, I have been playing back a lot in my mind, because I was just so into that matter. And the reason was that when in February of that same year, terrorists who had begun to run rampage landed in one of the federal government colleges. In fact, during the time that I was Minister of Education, the federal government college, Buni Yadi, was one of the weakest of the federal government colleges. You wouldn't even know you'd say federal government college by the sheer lowliness,
physical structure,
lowliness, everything in terms of quality of teachers, in terms of all of the facilities. And so when we were trying to revamp the ideals of Unity schools, it was a school that we were going to link, you know, to King's College. So if the King's College Boys Association, the Old Students Association, who got the right under what we called our public-private partnership with non-profit groups. It was mostly Parent Teachers Association, yes, you know, so King's College, to get their own, they would have had to also take a full responsibility for Buni Yadi, FGC Buni Yadi. Guess what? Terrorists killed children there.
Yeah. In their sleep.
In their sleep. And actually taunted the country by showing shared remains of these children, warned the girls that they must not come to school again.
And stay off.
And then took the people that they took with them. And I was like, no, this cannot happen. This is basically, you know, our government being called to, actually, I thought it was an insult on our government as well as us as citizens. And so I put out a voice there and said, the government needed to make sure that it responded to this decisively. Because if they should be allowed to get away with this, then we've already said to them, go ahead and do whatever you like. I didn't like the sound of that. So I was out there. As a matter of fact, I got pelted by the spokespersons of the government of that day, because they were preparing for centenary celebration. And so I was saying, how are you preparing for centenary celebration? Your children went to school. This is what has happened to them. Some 20, at that time it was being said, some 39 of them were killed. And I say, are you going to dance on the grave of your sons?
Children?
Please do something. It did not go down well. Guess what? 6 weeks after that, Chibok Girls happened. Now, when Chibok Girls happened, and the government again failed to signal to these forces of evil that it is well capable and willing to fight for the lives of the children of this country, what do you think we did? We simply created a market for bad behavior.
Do you carry a burden in your heart as, a former minister of education, when you juxtapose the metaphor that arose from the Buni Yadi massacre and the issue of safe school for the Nigerian child?
Well, you would have to think of the burden that I carry as even deeper than that. I carry the burden of a mother. I carry the burden of a citizen who's had children, who got educated in this country, in a society that was decent enough to care and look after me. And so for us, the minimum that we owed, seeing that there was destabilization going on in the Northeast, was to have a strategy for responding to any kind of threat to the lives of our children. Now, when that threat became a real one, it was realized. It was no longer just a risk. It was now a realized risk. What were you supposed to do? Respond instantly.
But
they failed the children in that regard. So when you think of safe school, that's a really ideal idea that we should have. But considering what we know in terms of the fiscal possibilities that the country has, even just manning all the schools to a certain degree of security and safety might take all of the budget for education. But there have been systems of responsiveness that are low-cost models that you can use to ensure that children are not put at risk and are just waiting to be taken away with nobody responding. Do you know that Chibok girls, when they were abducted, the story that they told, the ones that came back, was that they traveled for 3 days before they got into Sambisa. Where was the system?
The military.
Where was the system that was supposed to get them? Part of it came from the fact that governance puts little or no value, sadly, on the lives of those that should be governed. The social contract in this country is completely broken.
Would you say, was that deliberate? Because I remembered during the Jonathan administration, as president, he had wanted to declare emergency rules in Borno and Yobe states. The Borno Elders Forum kicked against it very vehemently. That was at the onset of the Boko Haram, the Buniyadi massacre, the Chibok schoolgirls kidnap, et al. A conspiracy theory here?
You know, one of the things I try to do in life is to stay within the realm of evidence. I am evidence-based. And so I work on the basis of evidence. I don't get into conjectures and speculations because I cannot back whatever is being said in that regard. Anybody can have spurious generalizations. But so in my own case, therefore, what I care about is that the school was raided. Children were taken. It was not until the 5th of May that there was a formal acknowledgement of those children by their government. Who does that? Who does that? I mean, as soon as I saw...
That was why I asked the question I asked.
Yes.
Is it not evidence-based first that there was, inaction by the government that is supposed to be...
Yes, that's the point. So we're saying the same thing. And that is a shock because, you see, I first learned about the abduction of Chibok girls. Remember that it preceded the bomb blast, the Nyanya bomb blast.
Absolutely.
Just because it was such a monumental tragedy. But remember that the morning of that same day was the bomb blast.
Yeah.
The bomb blast. Yeah. It was the night of that same day that Ben Buni Chibok happened. Yeah. And so when on the next morning I saw about 1 o'clock or thereabouts, I saw a tweet by BBC saying more than 100 girls abducted from a school in Borno. My goodness, no, this cannot happen. So I tweeted back at the handle of BBC and said, is this verified? Even after I wrote that and tweeted it, then I said to myself, it's BBC. It's not a rag sheet. It's not some blog. And that's when I became scared. And I said, no.
And you woke up to the Yahya bomb blast.
It triggered something in me. And so I began to tweet. I tweeted at every handle that I could tweet at, saying, please do something. Because I imagined girls in the hands of savages. It was too much for me. And so for every day following that, I was on that matter. In fact, you see the march that you saw on the 30th of April, when majority women gathered, and we had announced on social media, on radio, that people were going to come out physically and, in solidarity for the girls, was actually 2 weeks after there had been a massive, Twitter campaign based on the push that I was given that, no, we can't let this happen. No word. In fact, you know what was worse? The local media did not formalize a report on it. It was the social media that pushed and pushed. When the international media got into it, the local media had no choice but to acknowledge it. What happened to our country? How could a story of that kind break? And we saw pictures of parents who were trying to rush into Sambisa with them guns and arrows, saying they had no choice but to go for their children. What did I hear? What I heard was, oh, don't listen to them. Don't mind Obias Wesley. She wants to be relevant. And I'm thinking to myself, what happened to Nigeria? This is not the country I knew. What happened? What killed the soul of Nigeria and Nigerians? I think we're getting to the end of this. I think that a key point that comes out of the tragedy of Chibok girls, considering how unwell the situation of everyone in our country has been in the last 10 years, what comes out of it is that we do need to determine what our shared values are as a people. When Nigerians just quote this thing about institutions are what matter, institutions are what matter, they don't even know what they're saying. They're saying it will be impossible for Nigeria to ever become, and they're correct. Do you know why? Institutions don't exist in a vacuum. The basis of institutions are shared values. Yeah. The way a people do their things. If Chibok girls, abduction, and abysmal, horrific, terrible management of what happened to
whole
the
process.
children of the poor is to be the basis of judging our readiness to have the necessary institutions, then we're found short of it so badly. It is time for us to insist on a citizens-led conversation on the Nigeria we want. And it means that we have to have that conversation, because Chibok girls will be done justice by all of us putting value on our lives.
Yes, indeed. On that note, let's draw the curtain on this discussion and hope that there's going to be a change of tactics, of heart, of responses, you know, to the remaining Chibok girls and others that may want to.
Give me 30 seconds to make a pitch.
Go ahead.
That this administration must do three things: account for Chibok girls, disclose all the reports of panels that were set up both by the administration under which they were abducted and the successor administration. Those panel reports are due for public information. We as a country signed on to the Open Government Partnership, the OGP. It is a responsibility to be open and transparent. No opacity. Stop the opaqueness around Chibok girls. Publish those reports. And then number 3, closure. You need a closure strategy to be discussed with the parents. As a matter of fact, the parents of Missing Chibok Girls Association should be recognized as the body that sits across the table with the government on a quarterly basis to discuss the accountability for everything about their children and to make sure that they begin to work on a scenario toward closure, because this open wound cannot take these mothers and fathers down forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Obi Ezekwesili, co-convener of Bring Back Our Girls. 10 years on, still fighting strong for the freedom of the remaining 87 Chibok girls. And not to forget that you're a former Minister of Education.
Thank you so very much.
Very warm
You've been very
appreciation
kind.
for
Thank
coming.
you.